Hello quilty friends and welcome back to my channel. My name's Rachel and I make videos about quilting and my creative life. Anywhere that you can find me on the web is listed down in the description box below, including exclusive content over on my Patreon page. And if you enjoy this video or any of my other videos, I would urge you to subscribe to the channel. That helps me out immensely and I thank you in advance. Now, if you watched a couple videos back, I've actually finished the Alice Caroline Flower Garden Block of the Month quilt. That has now been sent off. It has safely arrived for them to do the long arming. It's not actually Alice Caroline themselves who do the long arming, they contract it out to someone else, but they're arranging all of that and it will come back to me completely quilted. I'm not sure about the binding, I'll have to update you on that one. But I did also say in that video that I was missing a long-term project, and I think I've done quite well whilst I've been doing that quilt to not start any new EPP quilts or new hand quilting projects. Yes, I've still got all of my old whips that are just hanging around and I will work through those, I promise. But I have started the Jane Austen 250th anniversary quilt and let me show you what that looks like. So this is a Laurie Holt pattern for Riley Blake Designs, and this is a sew along that runs from August all the way up to May, so it's quite a generous sew along, and that's because there is a lot of hand applique included in the quilt. I've already started, I've done some bits, so I wanted to show you how I've got things organised, some of the fabrics that I'm using, because I have received some questions from my Instagram. So let's start with how I've got things organised and the fabrics. I have just set up a little basket. It's going to live underneath my desk. It's nice that I can just dip into this basket when I need to. I can pull out the pattern, I can pull out relevant fabrics, and it's all good to go. I should mention that the majority of this was provided to me from Riley Blake as part of the work that I do with them. If you don't know, I'm a Riley Blake maker. I feature projects on their blogs and I get to work with lots of new fabrics that is released. The quilt actually features a lot of mixtures of collections from the Jane Austen fabrics, because Riley Blake are the licensees of the Jane Austen fabrics. So they sent me the Emma collection. So I've got a layer cake of the Emma and I've got fat quarters of the Emma collection as well, and some yardage to mix in. But when I read through the pattern, you can download the pattern completely free of charge. I'll leave the link to all these things in the description box. And I downloaded the pattern and looked at the swatch guide of all the fabrics. It tells you the name of the fabric and the collection. There was quite a few from the At Home collection and Sense and Sensibility. I've substituted, you know, there's like for likes within the Emma collection. There's greens, there's blues, there's yellows, there's things that you can mix in there. And I'm going to be adding a few little bits in from my stash. I'll show you those when I show you what I've already done. But there were some prints that I thought, that doesn't come up in the Emma collection and I haven't got much like it. So I went to the Bramble Patch because they stock a lot of the Jane Austen fabrics, and I just bought a few extras. Just where I thought I needed some extra highlights, so they are such classic fabrics. So I think I bought a mixture of things. I'll show you the fabrics that I've got in a moment, but yes, I've got a good mixture of the Jane Austen fabrics. And what I also did was printed the pattern, because the pattern is, like I said, free download, but it's somewhat like 50 pages, and I was like, I'm going to need all of those. It's going to annoy me constantly flicking backwards and forwards on my laptop or tablet. So I printed them all out and I've put them in this, this display folder. I purchased these display folders from Amazon. Again, I'll leave the link down in the description. They are really handy for patterns. Now, the first block is the centre block of the quilt, and again, there's the quilt. So block number one that you have a whole month to do is this centre block there. So that's what I'm starting working on, but that does finish. You have to trim it down to 18.5 by 18.5. This is using Laurie Holt's interfaced method of applique, and I'll give you a quick run through of that. But if you've watched my videos before, you'll know the hometown quilt was the same method, but that was then appliqued on the machine, but I'm going to hand applique it just because I think it's going to give that really heirloom type of finish. Although the pattern is free to download, you do need the So Simple shapes. These can be hard to get in the UK, so you just need to keep your eye out. If you follow me on Instagram, every time I find a company who's selling them, I put it on my Instagram stories. So far we've had the Quilt Shop and also the Stitchery Dorset that have sold them, so just search on Google to see if you find anything. Should be easier to come by in America, I think, for those templates. I also bought myself a 1/4 inch bias tape maker. So this is one by Clover, and it just makes the 1/4 inch bias binding. I did have some of these before, I've still got them actually, for when I made my hometown quilt, but I just bought a set off Temu and they didn't have any instructions, so it didn't tell you what width to cut the fabric, what size it was even going to produce. So I used to get annoyed with them, so I thought I'm going to get the proper one and then I can just, I know I've got the right thing and it's going to come out at the right size. And then once I am hand appliquing, I'm then using, for my thread, I'm going to be using Aurifil 828. So that is the thread that comes on the wooden spools for Aurifil, and it gives a really nice, almost invisible type of stitch. And I've already started a little bag of scraps, just because, again, with this type of applique, you just use small pieces here and there, and there might be little bits of scraps that I can substitute in, so I'm saving them all in this project bag, and if I don't end up using them throughout the rest of the quilt, I'll then just put them into my scraps. I think that's pretty much all of the supplies. Yeah, I can't think of anything else that I've needed for it. Oh, the interfacing that I'm using. I've previously used a much thinner interfacing, but Riley Blake also sent me the Laurie Holt interfacing. It's just a sewing interfacing. You can use any lightweight sewing interfacing. You don't want it too lightweight, you want it somewhere in the middle, I guess. So this is a package of 50 14-inch pre-cut squares. So this is what I'm going to be using. And here's my design board of where I've gotten to so far. So Riley Blake actually have been putting out video tutorials. There's an hour-long video tutorial on this block, so I shan't be replacing that in any way, but that video will give you great instructions. And one of the things that was said in that video is to sort of work in components, because for example, if you're appliquing this onto the background square, I think it's 20-inch, and then you trim it down. But if you're appliquing this onto a 20-inch square, you're trying to manage all of the layers, they're not attached yet. It can be a little bit difficult, so the video recommended to break it down into components. So I've started with the very first element of the design, and for example, this outer flower here, that is from a stash, that is a laundry basket's fabric. And then I've just added. Now in the video she recommends not to press anything and to use a pressing cloth, but the pressing cloth looks more like a terry towel rather than a traditional pressing cloth, so I need to figure out how to press it because it does need a little bit of a press. And what I've also done, but I didn't think to do this until I'd sewn all of the elements together, is I've actually started to cut away some of the interfacing, just because this was really thick and I thought that's going to add a lot of weight, and it will also be difficult to hand quilt it, which is what I will probably want to do. So I've just been trimming away, not very neatly, the interfacing, but I know to do it a little bit neater now going forward on the other blocks. What I have done with these tiny little circles that I've made is I've gone ahead and pre-trimmed the interfacing away, because this is a centre to a flower, so I can just trim that away and it's done then. What I essentially need to do so I can get stitching the rest is assemble the rest of these pieces. So you have to sew along the drawn line on your machine and flip it right sides out. So it's kind of like a bagging out method of applique. I'll give you a quick demonstration, but like I say, it is all featured in my hometown videos, but also in the Riley Blake videos. Another thing that I've been doing this week is helping my sister with a sewing room makeover. And FlexiSpot very kindly got in touch and offered to provide her with a desk. And the desk she opted for was the E7L standing corner L-shaped desk. This really made use of the space that she had and has a strong load capacity of 330 pounds. As you can see, it had no problems lifting me, making this an ideal desk for using with sewing machines and any heavier weights. It's all completely electronic and has 3 motors, so when you're lifting it or taking the desk down, it's very stable. As you can see, there's barely any movement in the glass there. And the height can go anywhere from 25 inches all the way up to 50 inches, making it suitable for any different configuration of working height. The desktop came in 2 pieces, so it can easily be joined together, and it has 3 legs for extra stability. The FlexiSpot desk comes with up to 15 years warranty and is a cost-effective option. We found the L shape of the desk to be really versatile. You could use it just for when you were sewing, and then you've got an ironing station next to you, or somewhere to put your pattern or cut all of your pieces. So it's really nice just to swivel around in between the 2 stations. But it was also really good to have a second machine there set up so someone can sew with you, or if you had an overlocker, you can use that at a second point. If you want more information on the E7L desk, you can visit the FlexiSpot website, and there's also a unique discount code that I'll put on the screen and in the video description that will get you $50 off your order. And if you want to see what I was making with my sister whilst we were setting up the desk, you can head on over to my Patreon, because this week's video I'll be showcasing what we was making with that wonderful colourful fabric. But here is the Emma collection for the Jane Austen fabrics by Riley Blake. So for this method, you do need to decrease your stitch length. Usually I put mine at 1.5 or even 1 if it's going to be a lot of curved piecing. So to begin with, I think I'll do these centre blocks. There's just a lot of straight lines in this one, so this will be nice. Now you can put a clip somewhere here in the middle just to stop anything from slipping, but all you do is just start stitching on the line. And just take it really nice and slow around any curved pieces. And then when you get to where you started, there's no need to backstitch, just go over the line by about 1 inch. I would usually do a few of these at once. Oh no, I've stitched 2 interfacings together. That's obviously stuck from that one. Oh no, I think that's gonna be a problem. Put the fabric away. You won't have 2 layers of interfacing like me. So trim everything down, and if your interfacing is more than 1/4 inch bigger than your stitch line, just trim that down as well. I'm going to sort this interfacing out on the back. Right, I think I'm going to have to scrap this one, because even if I trim this back interfacing away, I'm still going to have 2 layers of interfacing at the seams, and that will make getting these nice pointy bits here quite difficult. I will save this fabric, so the fabric won't go to waste, but don't be like me, check that you haven't picked up 2 pieces of interfacing. What I've done is when I've picked it up from here, they're all stacked on top of each other. One has stuck to the back. So I'll do another one. Let's resume. Right then, second time lucky. So as you can see, everything is much bigger than 1/4 inch. So I'm just going to go ahead and trim it all down to about 1/4 inch away. Just use nice sharp small scissors. But when we get to these tips, I'm actually going to trim across the tip just to make sure I've got extra room inside the seam, and clip into that seam there, clip off the point. Just be careful not to clip into any of your stitches. That one was awfully close. And then you want to pull the interfacing and the fabric apart like that. Snip into just the interfacing and make a little hole so you can turn through. I don't usually do it huge, but I guess it doesn't really matter. And then just turn through. And then you want a nice point turner, one that's not too sharp. It's trial and error, I think, to find the perfect point turner for you. So then just pushing against the fabric, not the interfacing, because that will be very easy to push through. You're just going to work all of your edges and push everything out. And just run the point turner along the seam as well, so you can make sure even the straight edges are turned correctly. You will go through the interfacing on more than one occasion, I can guarantee. And there we go. So that needs ironing before we cut away this interfacing, because that just offers a little bit of stability. So I'll give it a press, and I'll just, you know, use my wool pressing mat, regular settings on my iron, just making sure that you're tucking any of those white edges underneath where you can, just to give it a good finish. And there we go. Really nice and flat. Now I would usually do this in batches, you know. I'm going to sit now and sew all of these pieces, turn them all at once, press them all at once. Now this bit is trial and error for me, cutting away this interfacing, but I'm just going to give it a go. If you've ever done this in the comments, if you've ever done this, please let me know in the comments. I'm not going to go too close to the seams, but just roughly trimming, making sure to be very careful not to be cutting into the fabric beneath. It's just going to take a bit of bulk and weight out of the quilt. And as you can see, it's still retaining its shape absolutely fine. We're not interfering with the stitched edge or anything like that. You're just reducing a bit of bulk, and it might make it easier for quilting, maybe 3/8 of an inch in from the edge. So I'm going to get cracking with the rest, recut those interfacing pieces, and then I'll come back to you when it's time to assemble the whole block. Once I'd laid all of the elements out in a way that I was pleased with and stayed within the sizes required on the pattern, I then glue basted it in place rather than pinning it whilst I'm appliquing, because these pins that you see when you're sewing with the applique, they can all be removed. It would just mean that you're not getting your thread wrapped around any pins that are holding your applique in place, and I actually find the glue holds it in more securely than it would with pins. So I use the Roxanne's Basic Glue, and you can purchase that from Sew & Quilt in the UK, and there's a few other shops that also sell it. And I've got this piece of fabric resting on a foam board So once I put the dabs of glue in, I just put some pins directly into the foam board and allow the glue to dry. Any time that I've attempted to iron the glue dry, the glue ends up showing through the front of the fabric, which it doesn't do if you allow it to dry naturally. The glue is completely washable and it is quite low tack. If you gave it a sharp tug, you would break the seal of the glue, but it is enough to hold it in place whilst just sewing. It will wash out as soon as you wash the quilt, so you don't need to worry about that. And as you can see here, you really don't need a lot of glue across the item. I don't do a whole line of glue, I just do dots, very, very small dots. And I probably space them about every inch or half an inch, depending on the shape. I'll put it on the convex and the concave bits of a shape, and then just stick it down and pop some pins in it. I generally leave mine drying overnight, but the glue doesn't take that long to dry. It'll just be an hour or so until it's completely dry. But then it is on to the hand stitching stage. You could do this on the machine, you don't have to do it by hand if you didn't want to. I just really wanted to have a nice hand finished look to it. And as I said, I'm using Aurifil 80 weight thread and colour matching where I can. I'm not doing huge colour matching, a green with a green, a red with a red. If I don't have the appropriate colour or shade, I'm just going to use the nearest colour or even a grey just to try and blend in seamlessly. By using an applique stitch, you'll find that the finish will almost be invisible because most of the stitch is actually constructed on the reverse of the work, and I'll show you the back once it's all completely finished. But essentially it's the same stitch that you use for hand stitching your binding down. And you're just taking a very small bite of the applique fabric and then travelling beneath the fabric. And after a couple of hours of stitching, I actually decided that I needed to zigzag stitch around the edge of the fabric just to prevent any more fraying, because it was fraying quite badly, and you do trim it down by 1.5 inches all around the block, so I'll just be cutting that off anyway. I'm now stitching the very final section of this, so I've just got around this edge to about here, so I've got half of this left to sew. All of this centre bit is sewn, but you wouldn't think this would be a good colour for it because it's quite bright, but in reality you can't see any of the stitches anyway. You can sometimes just catch a glint of the stitches. In order to knot off at the end of my stitches, I just bring my needle to the back of the work and tie several knots on top of each other, usually around 3 or 4 knots just to secure it. So I've now completely finished the block, a 20-inch block. It was a lot bigger than I anticipated. Obviously I've read the pattern and saw that it said 20 inches, but when I cut the background fabric I was like, wow, a lot bigger. So now that is all completely appliqued down. It's looking very, very creased. So I am going to give it a little bit of a press now. It won't be its final press. In the video that Riley Blake did, and I'll leave that down in the description box so you can have a proper watch. It's an hour-long tutorial on making this block. She uses a pressing cloth, and it's not like a thin pressing cloth. It almost looks like it's padded, and it's made out of like terry towel material. So I'm just going to press into a towel and iron it and press it from the back side rather than the front. When I've done my hometown blocks, I've just pressed them normally, but there is some really nice dimension in this, but the background's just a little bit creased. But it's going to get folded up in the box until I complete the rest of them, isn't it? So I don't need to be too precious. But I am very, very glad that I did this stitch around the edge before the block got too bad. And I'll continue to do this with all of the blocks that are appliqued now, because it's just frayy. And most solid fabrics are quite frayy like this, aren't they? So it's nothing against the fabric I'm using, it's just what happens when you're handling it a lot. The block will also need trimming down. I'm just going to do that at the end. When all of the blocks are done, I'll trim them all down, because again, this might get handled a lot back and forth when I'm pulling things out, so I don't want to trim off this zigzag edge really. I'll keep it on there. But yeah, I think that took me 3 weeks from start to finish. I did have a little bit of a go slow when I prepared my shapes. It took me a little while to get them actually stuck down on the fabric, and then probably about 10 days to do this hand stitching on and off. And I just love how it looks from the back. I'm just like, oh, I love the back, and I love that you can see all of those stitches. So let's give it a press and we'll have a look how it comes out. Just a little press. That has come out perfect. You've still got the really nice dimension, but it's just nice and crisp. I've only pressed this corner, so you might be able to just see the difference very slightly. I don't think the camera's picking it up, but I'm going to do the whole block. So I'm very happy with how that's come out. I think it's pressed up really, really nice. So the substitutions that I made, I think this one here, definitely this was a laundry basket quilt fabric that I put in, and then this green here was a substitute. I think that was all. Yes, I was going to substitute these yellows, but I opted not to. I ended up buying that yellow. Do let me know if you're also joining in with the quilt, or if I've inspired you to have a look into the sew along. I will share regular updates on how I'm getting on with the quilt, so do make sure you subscribe to the channel so that you can come back and see how I'm getting on with the quilt. So until the next time I see you, I hope you have a wonderful week and happy stitching. Bye bye.